Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, where Pete and I figure out whether or not the market can build on that 335-point rally it had yesterday. How are we doing so far today? Well, stay tuned for the Rebel's Edge, and we'll fill you in. Bang! He is Pete Najarian.
Again.
And you probably know that, but it is October 17th, and Pete and I are, he's got
this thing's out of hand, man. This is out of hand. This has its own area code.
It probably does, or it should. Welcome back, folks. It is our final Rebel's Edge of the week. We go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Take Friday off for travel. That could change if indeed we end up signing a deal with one of these networks, which we hope to, fingers crossed. But we appreciate all of you joining us on the stream show. So, Pete, let's dive right into macro minute, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hedge funds are ramping up their foreign exchange or FX bets on President Trump. Basically, they're putting on bearish trades for the yuan and the Mexican peso because of the potential for, quite frankly, tariffs, or at least the threat of tariffs against goods imported that compete against U.S. products that in many cases have been outsourced. And so I'm going to say that, Pete, is my macro minute for today.
I'm going to give you my macro minute, and it's connected once again, like I came into the last week or two, which is earnings. And the reason I say that, John, is not too many days ago, we had ASML come out, right? And they talked about the negativity of their, production, blah, 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 all that. And the semiconductors got absolutely crushed. There was a day not too many days ago, we were down 5% for the semiconductors. So that was the influence of one company giving you their earnings. Well, flip that thing around, and this morning you look at Taiwan Semi. Well, they had a lot of really good things to say, and I know we're going to cover that, but I can tell you this, that was what the absolute catalyst was for today, and a nice big move to the upside, both in the NASDAQ and in the Dow, because of what they had to say and the demand for AI being absolutely still the leadership of all demands. This is something big in the semiconductor world, and that's what's reflected by what the markets are doing.
Well, we also cover fantastic futures, folks. And on fantastic futures, I'm going to say today it's gold. I could pick a number of other commodities, but I'm going with gold again, Pete, because it's through $2,700 to the ounce and just continues to shine. Yeah, the pun is intended. Continues to shine brightly because people just want the precious metal. Uncertainty, of course, as well as lower interest rates are two of the big contributors driving it. And today I'm going to say gold is my fantastic future.
John, I'm going to say the 10-year. I always bring up volatility because I do think it's very important and people should keep an eye on that. But I'm going to say the 10-year because we got all the way down to a low of 399, right around that 4%, let's call it. And then we've made this move back up to the upside. And that's something that could be a bit of a headache, I think, for the markets. We'll see. We'll see exactly how this goes, but we'd watch this pull down from, call it 410 and get down towards, let's say 4%, maybe even a little bit less. And we've just been going back and forth. And today, this is one of those days. I just think it's something, keep your eye on that because that is going to be an influence. And I would also say we cracked underneath 19 for volatility, John. We got into the upper 18s, we'll call it 19. But that is still a very, very tight race when you're looking at volatility. I'd say it's 19 to 20 right now. And it looks like if the markets continue to go the way they are and earnings continue, we're going to see this thing get back down towards 17 again.
Yeah, I would not be surprised, Pete. And of course, the more uncertainty you take out of the market, the more likely it is that we do see volatility come down because some people will say that volatility means the market's going down. No, it does not. Pete and I have been around long enough to know that volatility occasionally goes up when the market goes up. What it is it's a measure of uncertainty and or movement in the market. And one of the reasons for that movement is, quite frankly, to the downside now, that President Trump is now topping 62% in those polls, Pete. So if you're 62-38, in other words, the likelihood of him winning is 62% because of the swing states that have basically been lining up in his favor. That's one of the reasons that you're seeing volatilities go down, because the more uncertainty you take out of the market, the lower volatility will go. Yeah. All right, let's talk about Miso Robotics, because tomorrow, Friday, is the last day that you guys can actually click on that QR code there and participate in their crowdfunding. Now, there are several ways, of course, that companies come public. One of them is through an IPO, another is through direct listing, but there are other ways that companies raise money. And Miso Robotics, for instance, folks, is a company that has that burger flipping machine. They have that fry machine that you see working right there on the screens. And if California is charging $22 an hour and still not able to get fast food workers, that's one of the reasons that guy, Richard Hull, is out there basically, that's the CEO of Miso, doing this crowdfund. So this is pre-IPO. This is not a publicly traded company, but it is a company that has raised now through crowdfunding alone some $130 million. It's one of the most successful crowdfunds of all time. So these guys can help a fast food franchise make another $20,000 a month when you compare it to the fact that this machine can just operate and just keep working and working and working, whereas in many cases they have a hard time getting workers to come in and work and work and work, even at $22 an hour in some cases. So Miso Robotics, I am a shareholder. I am a paid promoter of this company. I love what they do. And I think that this one, when they do become a publicly traded company, will be worth a lot, because they just signed up White Castle, folks. They're already operating in a number of other burger and fast food joints across the West Coast, which is where they're based in Los Angeles. So take a look, scan that QR code with your phone. You can scan that QR code. It'll take you right to their crowdfunding site. And again, tomorrow's the last day of their crowdfunding. The next time you hear about Miso Robotics, it'll probably be either through a direct listing or an IPO. So thank you for listening. And again, thank you to our sponsor of the day, Miso Robotics. All right, Pete, let's dive into not ASML, as you said, but instead Taiwan Semi, because TSM says that the AI boom has no end in sight. That's literally a quote. Analysts believe that, and the world's largest semiconductor chip maker saw its profits jump by 54%. And of course, a lot of that 54% is AI driven. They do other chips as well, but this was exactly the opposite of what Pete was describing with ASML and them worried about where they were going in the future. This one, future looks pretty bright, Pete.
It looks bright, right. You're exactly right. I mean, the demand, John, for these capable chips of AI, they just can't talk about it enough. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And you talked about the profits up 54%. I mean, that's a real number for the world's largest chip maker. This isn't some small fry. This is the big guys. This is Taiwan Semi. So when you look at that, they absolutely crushed the earnings, John. Not even close year over year. An incredible number. They got 194. A year ago, they did 129. That's a big beat, I'd say. The gross margins you talked about were great. They also hit 52-week highs today of 212.60. They've pulled off of that, but it gives you a little bit of an idea. This thing has been absolutely flying. And the only negative that I would throw out there, and I'm not being negative, I'm just saying, is it a little bit stretched with the PE? Yeah, it probably is a little bit stretched, but we also watched that with NVIDIA for a very, very long time, where that PE was in the 60s, sometimes in the 70s, even higher than that. but over time starts to grind and starts to move, and all of a sudden that comes down a little bit. And now you're looking at something in NVIDIA that's a lot closer to maybe 30s to 40s, as opposed to where it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, as far as where they were on the PE. So I think this is an absolute crushing. That's what really is carrying the markets right now and lifting the semiconductors and lifting the technology names. This is a big, big number that we needed to get because ASML certainly had an influence as well.
Yeah, and the NASDAQ, which is heavy on the tech side, of course, up about 0.55%, not quite a full percent, about half of 1%, but that equates to about a 101-point rally for the NASDAQ, hitting the highs of the day as we're hitting this show, Pete. All right, let's talk a little bit about Elevance. These guys, they're an insurer. They say they face unprecedented Medicaid challenges. And they earned about $8.37, Pete. They were expected to earn $9.66. Turns out that's about 16% under what the street was looking for. And so, big shocker here. The stock's trading to the downside hard. In fact, how hard? Well, probably about 15%, Pete. So this is pretty tough when you miss this badly. And then you lower your guidance going forward. That's a recipe for disaster.
And that was exactly what I think really hammered it, John. And when people saw that and listened to that or read through it or whatever, that's why that stock hit a new 52-week low today. It got all the way down to 379. The interesting part is that it's kind of rallied off of that low into the lower 400s at least, but it's very long ways from 567, which is the 52-week highs, John. The trading was at least 4x when you look at it just in the first 90 minutes or so of the day. And for all the right reasons. I think the most damning thing for them truly has to be that their outlook, it was 37 and change, it went to $33. So that's a big problem. That's something that really has people kind of saying they're scratching their heads a little bit. I think this is one of those names. I'd rather be somewhere else in the industry than in this name right now. I know it's bounced pretty nicely, but I don't think I like that outlook enough to really drag me in and say, well, that is the absolute bottom. They might test that lower end again in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I mean, it rallied $40 off that bottom, but it's still down $60 on the day. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it. All right. Travelers, Pete, TRV, big insurance company, robust third quarter results, $5.24 versus $3.64. So that's pretty much blowing out the numbers. And an increase from $1.95 in the same quarter last year. And keep in mind, this is an insurance company, and some of the big events that we've been watching aren't included in this particular event right now, this earnings report. It doesn't include Helene. It does not include Milton, but nonetheless, they are exposed to some of those types of things. And so my question to you, Pete, is, would you put your toe in the water here? Or is the fact that they didn't put up a tremendous warning about earnings why you could feel somewhat safe coming into this one?
You could probably feel a little bit safe, John. I mean, those numbers that you just read off are absolutely incredible. I mean, the fact that their earnings were $1.95 a year ago and now they're $5.24. It shows you why Warren Buffett is so daggone smart too, John. We're talking about insurance names, right? Property, casualty, all of that. And do they pay out oftentimes? And the answer is, well, probably not. I mean, that's why they're getting such strong numbers that are being put up out there. And by the way, even on this rally to the upside, and it's pulling up the Dow, this was the major contributor to actually pulling the Dow to the upside. How about the 11 PE? Now, that's absolutely incredible. By the way, they got a great balance sheet. I looked at the free cash flow, John, $14 billion. So Travelers is an interesting one. I don't think I'd want to chase it, though, John, and for the exact reasons that you were just sort of implying, which is, hey, we've had some pretty big tornadoes, as well as hurricanes, as well as water surges and whatever else. There's some pretty brutal devastation. That might be something that I think you'd want to at least keep that in mind before you want to sort of jump into anything in the insurance world right now that's doing anything property and casualty. I mean, it's something that's just a fact. And we've watched the devastation that we've seen so far. I know it all too well. and there's going to have to be some checks written by some of these firms, and that might have a big cause in the next quarter. But for right now, the numbers that they were able to put up look fantastic.
Yeah, very, very strong quarter for travelers. And those year-over-year numbers, like Pete said, $1.95, yeah, pretty much blew right by that. All right, let's talk about Lucid, Pete. They make a great-looking EV, but it's not just making the vehicle, it's making profits from the vehicle. And these guys are just hemorrhaging cash, Pete. They announced a public offering of 262.5 million shares of their common stock. That will close tomorrow, the 18th of October. They're trying to raise about $1.67 billion. I hope they can do it. I don't think we should just have one EV company in America that kind of is everything, and that's Tesla. I mean, I hope there can be competitors like Rivian and Lucid and so forth, but man, none of those can, even come close to what the success that Tesla has managed to provide for its shareholders. And this is trading down hard. And we had unusual put activity in it as well, Pete, because as you see it falling off a cliff there from $3.30 down to here, well, there it is. You probably did okay if you were buying at the money puts like Pete and I tend to do. We don't like buying the out of the monies when people buy those, whether it's a call or a put. We like buying at the monies and then selling into collapses like this in the case of puts, right, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely. And John, I'll tell you, with Lucid, the problem has been they've got an incredible cash burn. To your point, they can deliver whatever they deliver, but the problem is they're just not making money. I mean, the cash burn that they've got right now, John, I show it to be $1.9 billion. So yes, they are raising capital. They need to raise capital. And this just shows you that for all the people out there that love to give me crap about one thing, I used to say all the time, Tesla, it's not just an automobile company. It's a data company. They're getting all of this data. It's essentially turned itself into a tech company that also happens to have vehicles, right? So I think that we're starting to see that. I mean, look at the profits and look at what Tesla's been able to create over time. And then you look at the rest of those folks in the EV, it's hard to find anybody who actually makes money doing this. And Lucid certainly is not one of those that's making money. And that's why this stock is getting pounded to 52-week. It's not at the lows, but it ain't that far off of the 52-week lows, John, which is down there at what, 229. It's been pretty close to getting down there. So I think there's a lot of reasons that they needed to raise this money. It looks like they will raise this money. But for me, even at this level, I still got no interest. I look at the short interest of something anywhere between 10 and 20%. I think they've been right for a long time, and I think they continue to be right for at least a period of time. Until something changes, I don't see any reason to jump into this stock.
Pete, they produced 1,800 vehicles
Yes.
in the quarter. Yeah. Tesla does 410,000 vehicles in a single quarter. That's not comparing apples to apples, my friends. As beautiful as the cars may be, as much as people may like them, you are not a competitor to Tesla if you're producing 1,800 cars. No. And yeah, the economies of scale do not apply at 1,800 versus 410,000. Yeah. All right. I know it's a popular segment. You guys love seeing these little videos. And we've got one that I think you're going to love because Tom Terrific, TB12 or whatever, Tom Brady, finally has been approved as now an owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. The first pro football player, I believe, ever, Pete.
It's not ever.
What's that?
It's not ever. There's one or two that after they got out of the NFL got involved, but probably not somebody at this young age, John. And they didn't get paid like Tom back in the day either. But I think there's one or two that have actually been there. Well, with him.
In fact, I guess I misspoke in a way, Pete, because technically George Halas, with the Decatur Staleys or Stanleys, whatever they were, that became the Chicago Bears, he was a player and an owner of that franchise, and then his family inherited it and so forth. But let's take a look and listen to Tom Brady as he walks through the doors as an owner of, not the owner, but as an owner with the owner who still has the worst haircut in the business. That would be Mark Davis.
Yeah. Tom, terrific. This is their Raider facility. This is pretty special. He's a big son of a gun, That's pretty cool.
Yep. And what a great athlete. It's wonderful to see him still involved, not just on the announcing side, but certainly that big contract helped pay for a lot of that ownership stake that he just got, Pete.
And he just, who he dragged with him was the old defensive end Seymour, came there with him. He got 0.5%. Tom got 5%. Seymour got 0.5%. So pretty cool. I mean, I love the fact that they stuck it out together. They both decided they wanted to get in there, and they got through the approval process. So I think that whole thing for Tom Brady is pretty cool. Speaking of Tom Brady, let's jump to the sports, John. In the NFL, and I say that, Tom Brady, obviously a quarterback, one of the greatest, if not the greatest quarterbacks of all time, the GOAT and all those things. And I'm one of those believers. I mean, I think the guy was special beyond words. And he didn't always have – I'll give you this one, John. Outside of Gronk, how many people could name you a running back or even a receiver other than maybe the 1 year with Randy Moss or, whatever it was? It's one of those things where it was really just this special guy, this great quarterback who distributed the ball to a lot of folks, had a great offensive line, but, it wasn't like he had the best receivers in the NFL playing with the New England Patriots. That was not the case. And some of these other guys have special receivers. Tom would have one or two once in a while, but he did a lot of this through his abilities and why he was so good. So I wanted to run this one by you. Early look at the MVP. Who should be the MVP if we stopped right now, not playoffs, nothing? And I got a real short list, so I'll go through it, John, to ask you, what do you think? So Lamar Jackson, this guy is absolutely incredible. He was the MVP last year. What has he done this year? Well, he's got 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1,500 yards passing, and 400 yards plus running the football. I would say that he might be right there again. Then you got Josh Allen. This is pretty good. Josh Allen's got 10 touchdowns. He's got 0 interceptions. Now, that's pretty amazing because we know who he is. He likes to throw the ball. He likes to run with the ball. He's got almost 200 yards rushing. He's got 1,100 passing. I still think you got to give it to Lamar. Lamar's been doing an amazing job, but Josh Allen also has the number 1 QBR, so he's another one. Then you throw in Joe Burrow. Problem for Joe is he's got no defense. They can't stop anybody. But nobody can stop Cincinnati either. So the only reason that they're able to be basically competitive is he is throwing the ball like he's never thrown it before this year. He's got 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The guy, when you look at his numbers, he's number 2 in QBR, by the way. And then you've got C.J. Stroud, you got Baker Mayfield, have done a lot of special things. Baker's probably thrown too many interceptions versus the others. But here's my guy. I'm going to go outside of all these quarterbacks. How about Derrick Henry? The Derrick Henry that I see playing right now at 30 years old, John, looks better than the Derrick Henry that came out of Alabama and he was running the football when he was 22, 23 years old. The guy leads the NFL in yards per game with 117. He's averaging 6 yards a carry right now in the NFL. And if you've seen him at all, John, and some of the things that he does when he's not playing, he's got a special chef. Everything is looked at very closely as far as calories and fats. This guy is 6'3" or taller and 250 pounds of basically just muscle. And he is a freak show. And he's got speed still at 30 years old. So all of this stuff about running backs can't play into their 30s, that's all a bunch of crap. This guy, he's the reason, in my opinion, that Lamar Jackson is doing as well as he's doing, because now Lamar doesn't have to run all the time when it's there. He can still give the ball to Derrick Henry, and that puts that offense into a very, very interesting spot, because you and I both know, as former linebackers in the NFL, you got a running back who can run, you got to respect it. you got to stop him. You stop him first, and that actually opens up everything behind you. And that's why Lamar Jackson's got some great numbers, but I think a lot of the reason is because Derrick Henry can run the ball.
Well, Pete, I'm going to tout one of our guys who, like C.J. Stroud last year, lit it up as a rookie. I'm going to say Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
Because you and I were all over this guy in the draft. We both said we would take him number one over Caleb Williams and over Drake May and all these other guys. All he's done is 6 TDs, Pete, only 2 interceptions. And by the way, he's run for 4 touchdowns as well. Now, his QBR, 74, roughly 73.7, very strong QBR. For a rookie to lead a nothing team like Washington as he has is impressive as all heck. And you haven't heard him complaining about not having, great targets. We've heard other quarterbacks doing that. But now we've got Jaden Daniels, and I think this kid at 4-2 through 6 games, Pete, is certainly in the conversation, at least for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I love him too. The only reason I didn't say him, John, because I really do love everything he has done. And he's a guy who's a lot like Lamar Jackson. He can run and he can do it by the run, but he's got a great arm and he's very smart about how he throws the football. He's not throwing interceptions. That's the problem with some of these guys. And some years we've seen Josh Allen or some of these guys throw too many interceptions along with all those touchdowns. Those interceptions kill you. They really do. It gives the other offense too many opportunities, which is why oftentimes they don't get through. It's really interesting, John. Neither one of us talked about Pat Mahomes just now. Anyway, let's go to the next one. We got college football. Number 5, Georgia's playing number 1, Texas. Now, that's going to be a heck of an SEC game right there. I think that one's going to be one of the better games over the weekend. And you've got Carson Beck, the quarterback for Georgia, who's been absolutely on fire. You've got Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning, who both, it doesn't matter which one of them it is, John. That's the luxury that they've got down there right now in Texas. It doesn't matter which guy starts or which guy plays. They're both equally unbelievably good. So that's going to be something that we need to watch, but that's going to be a football game to watch. You've got Bama and Tennessee. I'll tell you, Milroe is a stud. We both know that. That quarterback for Alabama, he's great at running. He's great at throwing the football. By the way, how about this? He's got 23 combined touchdowns running and passing so far this year.
It's amazing.
That's amazing. Dylan Sampson is the running back at Tennessee, John. He's the guy who fuels that whole thing. He's got 15 touchdowns running the football and over 700 yards running the rock. Tennessee needs to do that because they got to chew up the clock and keep Alabama's offense off the field. What do you think about those 2 games? Do you agree that those are probably the best 2 of the weekend? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, any game with Texas this year is going to be a must-watch game. Yeah. When you see them, when you see that stadium going crazy, that is, it's got to be one of the most interesting stories in all of college football, Pete. How Sarkisian has turned that thing into just a powerhouse. And it's also kind of funny to see Matthew McConaughey wandering out there every once in a while and going, all right. But okay, let me throw you the game that I know you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's an unranked team versus a number 16 Indiana team. Indiana, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Because Indiana has looked amazing. And playing against Nebraska at home, Pete. Yeah. It's at Indiana, I believe. I think this is going to be a very interesting game. And Nebraska deserves the accolades that they've got for playing tough smash mouth football again with the black shirts and so forth. But Indiana's kind of special this year. And I like their chances against Nebraska, obviously.
Well, they're 6-0. They were the first team that actually qualified for bowls because they were the first team to reach those 6 games and be 6-0. Others have now come over the last week or so. So obviously that's all going to change. But I'll tell you, you're right. That's going to be a heck of a game. I think the black shirts are pretty interesting to watch. They're 5-1. It's not like they're somebody that's, the redheaded stepchild or anything. And yet, this could be a heck of a game. Everything in Indiana has impressed me this year, and Illinois. Quite honestly, the quarterback for Illinois, that guy's a gunslinger too, John. So the Big Ten's a lot different than it's been in the past. I think Michigan is good, not great. I think Ohio State is pretty daggone good, but they aren't great because they make some mistakes here and there, and they're not blowing people out like they usually do. And that was part of the reason Oregon, was in the position to actually win the game. And unfortunately for Ohio State, the guys slid too late. They ran out the clock. It was all gone. But that was a heck of a game last week. That was a lot of fun. I'll tell you what, there's one other game I'll even throw out to you too, a ranked one. You got BYU. They're at home in Lavelle Edwards Field, and they're going to be playing against Oklahoma State. Now, that one should be fun. That's a Big 12 game. Oklahoma State came in this year pretty daggone happy about their team and the players and everything else. BYU's undefeated. And they've got a very interesting quarterback. The dynamic is very interesting. He's a runner, he's a passer, and he's not Mormon, John. He's actually a Jewish kid. And it's really interesting because they had a whole feature on this on ESPN last week. And they have embraced him, and he's embraced them. And it's really amazing what they've been able to do on the field, but also, the interesting side of the off the field, because I don't know that has happened before at BYU, to be honest with you. But either way, they did a great feature on it, and the kid is running and gunning and doing a great job, and that's why they're undefeated right now.
Yeah, and Pete, one of the last times a non-Mormon their quarterback was probably McMahon.
Yeah, that's a few years ago.
Yeah, it was a few years ago. It might be like 40 years ago. Well, folks, thank you for tuning in to the Rebel's Edge. I hope you avail yourself of that Miso investment opportunity if you're so inclined. Again, there's the QR code. Thank you, Jared. You can scan that code with your phone, and if you choose to invest, you'd be investing alongside us in a company that is turning those robots on and helping companies like White Castle, like Cali Burger, and many of these fast food franchises survive in an environment where they got to pay $20 an hour. And I think it's something that people will really embrace going forward, having humans do the other work and maybe having the machines slave over these fries and burgers for these fast food, as well as for the fancy steaks, because Miso also does that as well for those fancy steak restaurants. So thank you for joining us. We're not on tomorrow. We encourage you to tune in Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, have a great weekend, everybody.